Hello, and welcome to Dead Sales Walking, How to Bring the Sales Funnel Back to Life, a one-to-one media webinar sponsored by Ravana. I'm Mila D'Antonio, Editor-in-Chief of One-to-One Media, and your moderator for today's event. First, let me introduce today's speakers. First, we have Jonathan Gray, Vice President of Marketing and Leader of Revenue Generation and Marketing Services for Ravana. He leads a team of professionals who oversees marketing analytics and integrated marketing services programs that leverage campaign automation and electronic marketing strategies. Our second speaker is Michael Behrens. He is Senior Vice President of Marketing at WebMetro and the lead strategist in developing and implementing online direct marketing programs for WebMetro clients in a variety of industries, including healthcare, travel, education, retail, e-commerce, and technology. And finally, Jim Nail. He's Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. He leads Forrester's coverage of online video, the evolution of television advertising, the digital transformation of advertising agencies, and marketing mix optimization. Welcome, gentlemen. Before I review the agenda, let's take a walk through the ON24 interface. If you have a question for our three speakers, please click the red Q&A icon. If you encounter any technical issues with the ON24 system, please click on the gold question mark for a list of FAQs. Please turn off all pop-up blockers because there will be a survey during the Q&A and we encourage you to participate. All attendees will receive an email with a link to the archived version of this webcast. Finally, if you're tweeting throughout this webinar, the hashtag for this event is OneToOneMedia. Let's move on to today's agenda. Jonathan, Jim, and Michael will discuss why and how the sales funnel is broken, how integrating contextual data from digital marketing with sales can lead to greater revenue, and the recommended tools and technologies to help integrate contextual data and fix the broken sales funnel. This webinar will also be followed by Q&A and the post-event survey. So let's get started. So I think everyone can agree that the traditional sales funnel has been dead for years. The old theory relies on prospects coming into the top of the funnel and falling out of the bottom. But in today's world, customers don't follow a linear path. Jonathan, Michael, and Jim, because customers don't follow the traditional linear path when engaging with and buying from a brand, can you describe the types of challenges this has presented for sales organizations over the past few years, and how has this affected the sales funnel?
Thanks, Mila. This is Jonathan, and what we've recognized is this total transformation that's occurring in the marketplace. And as a sales organization that really heavily focuses on how do you engage customers more successfully and drive better engagement that leads to lifetime value and loyalty and great sales results, we've been watching the changes in today's customers and the way that now they're so hyper-connected across multiple different devices. And we've recognized that as customers have changed, it's time for sales to make similar changes, and marketing and sales are going to have to work together to accomplish it. But it's no longer the same type of customers that we've seen for years.
And I think this is a really telling statistic. This was taken from a Google study back in 2011 called ZMOT. And what they were trying to accomplish was really appreciate and understand in this evolving world of so many different choices for how to engage a brand down the decision path in both offline and online environments, how were consumers engaging with the brands, how were things evolving. And what this basically illustrates the fact is that before a person makes a purchase decision, they were averaging 10.4 sources or 10.4 engagements across different avenues, be social and mobile and search and retail and sales. And what's even more telling is when you think about what it was just 1 year prior in 2010, this number was actually 5.2. So in 1 year we saw a doubling of number of engagements and sources that consumers are engaging with when they go ahead and lead to purchase decision. I think really demonstrates the challenges that we face as sales and marketing managers.
And this is Jim Nail from Forrester, and because there are so many sources, instead of there being a funnel, the world looks like this, which it's a somewhat tongue-in-cheek graphic here, but I think illustrates that idea that with so many different sources that those buyers are using in their research process, it's very hard, if not impossible, to predict, which source is going to be used at which particular time or at which particular stage of the whole process. And so you're likely to see those prospects moving back and forth. In fact, not just between sources, but even they might get down to preference and then have to jump all the way back to an earlier stage of the funnel if they learn something new in one of these sources that causes them to rethink where they are in that decision cycle. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that this decision process is a lot more complicated than it ever was in the past. I don't think human minds really work in a linear, one-way fashion anyway. But what's changed is because there are all of these different sources and so many of them are digital, where we can actually see what those buyers and prospects are doing, we have much more of a window into these different stages and into where is the consumer in their decision path. And that's what really creates, I think, the biggest challenge today in making sure that sales and marketing are aligned, because in the past, it was a relatively small amount of information we had, and so we had that sense. But now this makes it much more complicated to be sure that marketing and sales are on the same page in how to effectively work these leads.
Thanks, Jim. And this is Jonathan, and exactly we're seeing that in spades in our operations as we help clients with their providing sales resources for acquiring, growing, and retaining customers on behalf of leading brands. And what we're seeing is that there's much more awareness of what's the information and the customer's journey online, and the great data that Jim was talking about, the visibility to this nonlinear funnel. And then as you look at most sales operations, they're still lined up with, did you make the phone call? What was the result and disposition of that phone call? And did you move them to the next step? And when is the demo scheduled? And have you presented a quote and a contract? And it's this very linear progression of a funnel that's still being used in many cases to manage sales operations that no longer actually relate to the true customer journey that's going on. And so as a result, marketing and sales are not aligned. And the impact of that is all these customer relationships, then the lost revenue that we're seeing, it's just being kind of falling on the floor because the journey is not being carried forward from the marketing understanding all the way through to the sales understanding.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's interesting insight. Can you go a little bit more in depth and talk about those factors that are contributing to the broken sales funnel?
Sure, absolutely. So just as we have more visibility in marketing up front, the chief marketing officers and chief sales officers are now starting to get visibility to these missed opportunities, and being able to identify that their cost of lead and cost per sale are actually higher because they're not taking advantage of it. When we look at some of the great research that Forrester's put together, we're seeing data that CMOs look at every day, and now 70% of a customer's buying decision is now made based on information he or she finds online well before a salesperson has had a chance to get involved. So, it's kind of classic, silo where the chief marketing officer is saying, hey, I'm spending all this millions of dollars with great segmentation, optimizing all the spends across so many different channels and attribution modeling and all this great information. I'm providing the best leads to sales that's possible with all this great sophisticated technology, but they just don't seem to be converting. So, and on the other hand, our chief sales officers, seeing that 73% of leads are lost because they're sent to sales before they're ready to buy, they're saying, well, the reason why we're not selling more is that the leads just aren't the ones that I want. I need better qualified leads. My sales operation's super efficient, but we just need better leads. So marketing, kind of classic. We probably all have experienced in our lives. It feels like we're providing great leads, but the sales operation is not converting, and sales operation is saying, I'm not getting the leads that I want or at the stage that I want. So the thought that Michael and Jim and I have been spending a lot of time talking about, and one that Michael and I have spent a lot of time in looking at how to address is how things work today. Because this is what we see. We see this great sophistication of marketing and the evolution there with all the visibility to all these different types of channels and real-time bidding and search and retargeting and all sorts of different access to mobile customers, and how do you build social campaigns and reaching out to this universe of potential conversations that are happening, and using personas to build landing pages and understand them more specifically and really tailor what's going on to each of those individual needs. But an example that we've had is if you think of a hair restoration company, for example, they may have 8, 10, 20 different types of personas of people they're targeting with marketing activities, but 2 really distinct ones, for example. So imagine you've got the guys who are over 40, I'm in this boat, but who are recently divorced and are looking for hair restoration in order to be more attractive. There's another persona that's very distinct from that, and it may be women who are going through chemotherapy, cancer treatments, right? So they're looking for hair restoration solutions for women, right? So those are 2 really distinct searches that could be going on, or distinct personas, and right now the sales operation treats that the same way. Why? It just doesn't make sense. We all can recognize that that is not the optimal way to address those individuals with the best sales experience, and yet this is way too common in most of the marketing and sales operations that we see today. Taking personas but turning them into handing them through a very efficient and a call center operation that's just not taking advantage of understanding that persona up front. So Jim, can you talk a bit more about so these personas and how it goes forward, and this tremendous opportunity that's there?
Absolutely, because I think another contributing factor is a lot of companies that I talk to are still kind of behind the way the consumers have changed, which you mentioned earlier, but the consumers have changed a lot because media itself has changed. Many of us of a certain age, over that 40 or 45 age group, grew up in this world where advertising and marketing was pretty much a one-way communication, and our best hope was that we had this really compelling message and people remembered, and when they were ready to buy, they would give us a call. And then we've all lived through the internet world where all of a sudden not only could we send that message to the consumer, but they could click through, and if that message was compelling to them, they could explore and learn more right at that moment. That was a pretty exciting development for those of us in marketing. We could see the immediate impact of that message. And then, of course, in the last 10 years or so, the world has changed again, where it's not just that sense of click through and come read some more information, but now where there's actual conversations, both with the brand and around the brand to other consumers. And we've always known that word-of-mouth marketing is the best marketing, and of course social media has made that much more accessible and much more at scale for consumers. So that's becoming an increasingly important part of the consumer decision process, and I'm sure that has contributed to that big increase in the number of different inputs to that decision that we saw in that slide a moment ago. So one of the questions, I think one of the challenges and contributing factors to this confusion today is then how do you just organize all of this stuff? How do you organize all of these different choices? How do you understand how to use them appropriately? And so Forrester has created this construct we call the marketing radar. And it begins with, sorry about that. And a little trouble with that slide. There we go. There's the marketing radar. And what the marketing radar recognizes is that world where it's no longer about pushing a message one way, achieving reach and awareness. There are now 3 tasks that marketers need to think about and balance appropriately in their situation. First, of course, is reach. Hey, if no one's ever heard of you, you got a very low chance of making a sale. So all that reach stuff is still there and is still very, very important. But then there is the engagement depth. Again, when they want to learn more, when they want to start to explore that in more detail, and again, particularly things like social media where they're going to have that immediate engagement. And of course, depth, and that's where we saw, they've 70% have made their decision before they talk to a salesperson. That's because they can get to that depth of information that before maybe the salesperson was the only way to get that. So this is an important thing that I think most companies have realized something has changed. They're struggling a bit with how to exactly picture that change and focus it. But hopefully this kind of concept and this idea of thinking about these 3 areas of reach, depth, and engagement or relationship building help give you a new kind of framework to put your marketing efforts in.
Thanks, Jim. That's great. I heard from you and Jonathan how not having a window into the myriad digital sources, not having a lack of organization, and having that one-size-fits-all approach really lead to that broken sales funnel. Can you talk a bit more about how this all leads to missed opportunities for the CSO and CMO?
Yeah, definitely. And the missed opportunity is when you try to oversimplify this process into whether it's a funnel or we use this life cycle idea, and various people have these kinds of ideas where there are stages like discover, explore, evaluate, buy, engage. Those are still too high level. That's better than the funnel because I think it's more representative of the kind of process that that buyer is engaged in. But to really take advantage of these opportunities, take advantage of the data, take advantage of those what you're able to see through these digital media when a prospect is doing this research, is you have to break it down into much more granular kind of steps. And on this chart, I think there's 14 or 15 steps that you can see there. When you start to get to that level, now you can really begin to think about what information and what kind of contact is really the most appropriate for each of those. Is that a sales contact or a marketing contact? And is that about depth or engagement or awareness? And what we see is that it isn't an digital or traditional one or the other kind of binary decision. We see it really is a mix of digital and old-fashioned, in-person, face-to-face kinds of touches. In this research, we talked to 75 marketing decision makers, and this was particularly in high-tech B2B, but I think is representative of what a lot of companies are going through. And we were able to identify the really top performers versus those who were less successful. And what you'll see here is that there is certainly a lot of digital, and again, the top performers are using more digital kinds of channels than the bottom performers. But still, there are a lot of those seminars and events, trade shows, telesales, telemarketing, again, that more personal touch. And so that real challenge then is how do you put those together into the right combination at the right time to maximize your opportunities. And I think it is just a hard thing to do. It's much harder than marketing used to be. But if you don't do it right, other companies are beginning to get it right, and you run into this this real problem where you could pay the ultimate price.
And what is that, Jim? What is this costing the low performer?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me not hold you in suspense any longer. This again comes from a piece of research that we did. I think there's a different piece of research that was done earlier this year. But you can see here that the top performers just go all the way to the end. You can see along the sales cycle at each stage, from the marketing qualified lead to the sales qualified lead to the pipeline to the one deal, these differences in the top performers are doing better. But at that last right side of the scale, where the top performers are getting twice the end-to-end close rate as everyone else. So those who are doing it right, experimenting with it, starting to use that data, just a tremendous advantage that they then wield over their competitors who aren't doing it as well.
So we discussed the challenges involved. Let's discuss the solution next. Jonathan, what are your thoughts and advice for companies that want to repair their sales funnels and create alignment with other organizations internally?
So thanks. Yes, so this is the exciting part, right? So how do you put this together? What's the solution to this? It's not a linear sales funnel anymore. You've got all this great marketing information, developing personas and understanding customers as they're having conversations, and a display ad development and campaigns and search ads and mobile and social, and how do you have activities going on there that help you to understand the individual better. Those personas can be mapped into sales organizations and sales teams to truly leverage the information that's there. My example for that hair restoration. So for the woman who searched on affordable hair loss solutions for women, right? You've got great key information there about her search for affordable hair loss solutions for women that could be used for routing, for scripting, for plans in nurturing that would match up with her exact need and where she came from. Wouldn't it be great to have that information be what helps to determine how the sales operation behind lines up to engage with that specific customer for those specific needs? So taking advantage of marketing and sales data to be able to improve the sales conversion will help to optimize the marketing spend and the sales results. And there's critical information in the sales operation that can help the marketing team to do an even better job of optimizing its spend. So there's great information that can be taken advantage of when you create this integrated marketing and sales solution. So for example, marketing information that sales would love to have. So Ravana has been providing sales solutions for about 20 years. So we have for leading brands that would be very recognizable, but they consider us such a strategic asset to them that they don't often let us mention their names in public. So, but the truth of the results that we provide, we've won the Sales Outsourcing Provider of the Year award 2 years in a row from the Stevies. So this is the kind of information that as a leading sales team we would want to have from marketing to help us with our plans. Time of day, geography, that would help us to understand the competitive set we would be facing up against, these personas and the keywords that were searched, the content that has been consumed, number of visits to a landing page about the conversation before they converted to being a marketing qualified lead, before they came to sales, which device did they use, those very critical information there as well, and then predicted conversion rates from a marketing source. So for example, we had a client who had the enviable challenge of having 5,000 more calls per month on an inbound basis from different sources online, turning into an 800 number call to our team. And there were 5,000 each month that were unable to be answered because it was beyond the forecast. So the plan is, it makes you ask the question, if I could only handle 1,000 of those additional calls before, with the additional resources we have, which 1,000 should I address first? And these are the kinds of questions you can answer and effectively engage much more successfully when you have integrated this type of marketing data with sales. The full circle of this process is to gather information from sales that actually helps you to bring back to marketing information that really matters in optimizing the marketing spend and reducing the cost per lead and cost per acquisition. So details about the order value and products purchased, that's fairly typical of what gets sent back now. But what about the term of the contract? Wouldn't that be interesting to know that these types of customers from these personas turn into the longer term contracts? What objections are being faced by the sales operation so that marketing understands that people coming from this particular journey result in these typical types of objections, which may let you understand content that is typically provided. So for particular personas, they tend to want this additional type of information. Perhaps that could be provided earlier in the nurturing process or in the online engagement process, so it's not required to be a follow-up. And then the average handle time, very interesting for us as a sales organization to know if the customer from this path is a very long process requiring lots of education, or if it's someone who's going to be a quick decision maker. It'd be helpful to know, does this persona turn into actually an influencer but not the true decision maker, and now I've got 3 or 4 additional decision makers I need to engage to progress the conversation in the process. Even whether it's someone who's interested but plans to buy within 90 days, typically that would show up now as a no sale. So it wasn't a good marketing lead provided when in fact it is someone who is interested in a period of time. And all of these would be relevant as well for the nurturing process that marketing would create. So the solution is to integrate marketing and sales, including critical data elements that can flow more successfully between marketing and sales and improve their performance.
Thanks, Jonathan. Before I go on to my next question, I'll just take a moment to remind the audience again that if they'd like to add a question, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the console, and we'll get to that near the bottom of this webinar. So, Jonathan, you really touched on some key points there. Many are finding that contextual data is the key to mending the funnel, that by integrating contextual data from companies' integrated marketing efforts, sales organizations will have the opportunity to fix the broken sales funnel and personalize each interaction with their prospects and customers. Michael, can you touch upon why contextual data is so important and what are the benefits that it creates for sales?
Absolutely. So I think contextual data really is at the heart of what we're trying to create. I mean, Jim articulated it really well in the fact that it is difficult to track users in this nonlinear funnel in which they're engaging with a multitude of touch points and moving back and forth from different stages within what we consider to be the normal buy funnel. And one of the best ways to uncover where they're at, how they want to be engaged with, is to really understand the contextual data. So we kind of start with a simple formula when we're kind of beginning our online marketing campaigns and trying to create a really rich engagement, a relevant conversation. In order to do that, you really have to understand who you're speaking to. You have to identify the demographics, the psychographics, the behavioral elements. What stage they're at in this funnel. Are they in an early stage where they're looking to do more discovery and looking to do more comparisons and research-oriented engagements with you as a brand? Are they in a more shopping mode and looking to do more comparisons, or is it more transactional? And each of those different stages, they're going to expect a different type of engagement, a different type of conversation. And then also, where do they want to engage? Consumers are empowered now to say, this is where I want to engage, albeit a mobile environment, a social, or a web environment. And so understanding and defining these contextual elements of who, what, and where really give you the impetus and the catalyst to do what we're all striving to do, which is, how do I message? How does this individual user need to be messaged at this moment in time right now? Where are they at in the funnel? What's important? And I need to tailor that message. And I think that we've all seen that when you provide the relevance, you provide what feels to be a very one-to-one conversation, that conversion rates go up. I mean, I love Jim's highlight on the performers and the underperformers, and the conversion rates being 0.75 for the underperformers and 1.54 for the top performers. We see that all day long within marketing. Those that tap into this data, uncover it, and use it to change the conversation to be more relevant, see huge improvements in overall conversion rates. So I want to dive into this a little bit more and just give you a little more kind of practical examples of the way that the data is being used right now and how it's uncovering opportunities for better marketing, better conversations, and all the way through the funnel from the marketing stages to the elements of the sales. So we kind of classify it in three ways. So first you have, this is kind of applicable to the online environment where there's so much transparency and tracking. You have user metrics that you're able to get even before the user ever comes to your website. There's a lot of data available from companies like DoubleClick and even your Google Analytics and ComScore and Hitwise and campaign management tools like Marin that give you all this insight about what's happening to this user, who is this user, what are they doing before they ever actually come to my web property, my mobile application, or my social environment. And you can learn things like the behavioral attributes. Are they really in market? What types of categories are they spending time with outside of my website? Search queries. I mean, Jonathan gave a great example about hair restoration. One of the greatest things is to tap into this database of intentions, as many people refer to it, and really understand what exactly is this user expressing to me. What are they telling me about where they're at in the funnel, what they'd be interested in, what kind of conversation would be relevant at this moment. Search is a great place to start and help that definition. You can understand, you can learn differences and nuances based on the device that they're accessing. Are they going to be able to consume the same content coming from a mobile device or a tablet or a desktop? Probably not. So the more that you're able to identify and uncover these attributes before they come on the website, the better you're going to be, not only in your advertising, which we'll talk about in a second, but in the ability to create a customizable conversation in your web property. So now all of a sudden they come and they visit the website. They're an on-site visitor, and you're going to have a whole new set of attributes that you're going to be able to uncover, contextual data points that are going to help you create a relevant conversation. You're going to see, as Jonathan talked about, you're going to get the content consumption. What videos are they watching? What features on the website are they using? What pages are they navigating to? What does the whole path analysis look like? All of that helps you uncover how you can alter your message, especially when you couple in all the information that you gained about that user before they came to your website. And then you can use tools like an Omniture, Site Catalyst, or maybe even a more dynamic solution like a test and target to use that data and change the messaging in a more dynamic way. And the third part, which is important, so after you've learned the information about the user before they've come to the websites and defined those attributes, you've uncovered what they've done on the website to better identify where this user may be, what's going to be relevant to them. You've hopefully done some dynamic delivery of content that was relevant based on what you learned. That process must not stop, and I think it does all too often. But as it moves from marketing to sales, like Jim showed on his nonlinear funnel, they're moving in and out at different points. And so when that transition takes place, the customer is expecting for the relevant conversation to continue. So if this data can be seamlessly passed into the sales organization is going to be able to have that relevance. Starting over is unacceptable. So the thing that needs to be done is to transfer this data in. The second thing that needs to be done, as Jonathan talked about, this has got to be a 360 view. There's so much interesting data that's uncovered about the user once they enter the sales operations, and all too often that sits and remains in that silo. So getting the full 360 view means going through and taking the information that was discovered in the call center with the telesales, with the sales, personnel selling, what was uncovered about that user. If they bought something, what did they buy? And having, filling out the full 360 view of the customer, which is what we really need to do in order to optimize all parts of the process, is solidified when you're able to update it and add this information back into the profile. So if we go on to the next slide, so in order to do this, we talked about, I mentioned a few different technologies, and there's so many that I couldn't even fit it on a slide in terms of all different technologies that you could leverage to help uncover these insights. The key is to make sure that you use technology to help do this, because this is a process that can't be done but without tapping into the innovative technologies that are available. Also, there's a lot of data to digest. There's a lot of data to consume. And to make this actionable, you need technology. You need people that get it. So it really winds up becoming a convergence of experts within sales and marketing, working with what many people refer to as data scientists now, business intelligence groups, analysts, whatever you want to call it, but people can kind of crunch the number and put it in a way that's digestible. So what we talk about a lot is just a lot of contextual elements. But how do I basically turn this into something that I can really action? How can I change the message at scale? How can I operationalize this? So the key is to really take these contextual points that hopefully you've uncovered now and group them. Some people call it clustering, put them into segments, creating segmentation strategies in which you can create much more rich engagements, messaging, offers, and even marketing, advertising, and media buys against it. So what the real key is to create these segments. And so you take a contextual segments and you use hopefully some statistical tools like maybe an SSPS or an R, where it helps you digest and take the data and group it in a way that show similar characteristics. And when you do that, you'll create these segments. And what I want to show is kind of how you can really use these segments to optimize performance and generate more leads, and in something that we all take part on if we're in lead generation, which is landing page optimization. But I think it's kind of flawed in the way that so many people look at landing page optimization, and inherently in the name of landing page optimization, they're looking at optimizing the landing page, creating better content, creating better information that improves conversion rates. But the reality is you're not optimizing a landing page. You're really optimizing to a group of users that need to be connected with in a more rich, customized way. So this is just an example of one landing page and looking at a heat map of how 3 different segments that were statistically grouped as being variant in the way that they engage with the brand acted on that landing page. And you can see segment 2 is very, very different. And if you tried to basically optimize this landing page without really talking specifically to the different segments that are engaging with the landing page, you're never going to realize optimal results. So that's kind of a operational thing you can do on the landing page side. On the other side, the way that this data is leveraged, and this is where I see a lot of advancement being made in the way that people are buying and optimizing their marketing budgets to create more leads for the sales, which is looking at the media value variance by segmentation strategies. So there was a lot of data points that we discussed, but really going through and running that analysis, clustering or grouping them based on performance. So this would be like a dashboard or a scorecard that your media planners and your media buyers would be looking at as they digest contextual data. So if we look here on the first one, it is a real example from a random agency client. And what happened basically statistically is if the word buy showed up anywhere in the search term, and the click originally came in through Monday through Friday, not a weekend, and it came from the Los Angeles DMA, it was statistically proven that there was a 36% increased propensity to convert, and they would more often buy product D, which was a higher margin product. So how does marketing act on that? Well, marketing's being quick to iterate and evolve their marketing and advertising by appreciating the fact that that value, because they convert higher and they basically buy a higher margin product, it's a more valuable lead. So what do? They push the winners. They go back into the media platforms, hopefully using an element of marketing automation and campaign management tools to be pushing and buying more of that, which is great. You're maximizing your winners. You're also isolating those that are not winning, that are not optimal. And what you do is you get rid of those buys, and you try to funnel it towards buys that create a better ROI. But there's a problem here, and I think that the problem exists because this is kind of in many situations where the contextual insights stop. And if the last example is kind of a case study that I wanted to bring up. So the last example is a real example. It says highlighted here, mobile devices. So someone who came from a mobile device, and they came in from a search term. This was actually search terms. So the conversion rate on leads that originated from a mobile device was 90% lower than their exact counterparts in a desktop environment. So the exact same keywords, the ones that have been working well for this brand for a long time and turning leads into sales, converted 90% lower when it came from a mobile environment. So, on a responsible thing to do from a marketing perspective is to not be making that buy because you're connecting the revenue event. It didn't take place, and you basically need to shift somewhere else. Because you have the contextual data, you realize that this was a group that could be turned off, so in of itself it's a win. But the reality is that if it's shared with sales operations, you could potentially challenge it that it's not about media weight. It's really about creating a differentiated experience based on the contextual data that you have. So in this situation, this was a legal services firm, and we worked with them. We've been working with them for like 7 years, and every year they continue to grow and are a market leader on so many different channels within online, from search to organic to display and social. And they knew the power of contextual data. Very sophisticated sales operations. They appreciate the fact that they need to iterate and understand where the user at in that funnel, in that path. And so what we did is we set up unique numbers. We set up unique campaigns within this struggling campaign. We listened to the calls. We heard the challenges and the frustrations, and it became very apparent what the issue was. For years, they had been dealing with people who had been coming via desktop. Desktop users were consuming more content. They were watching the videos. They were digesting the infographics. They were reading the content, the pages. They were coming into the sales operation much more educated. They were more qualified. They were more in the transactional side than they were in the early discovery stages. In the mobile, what we saw people doing was basically very quickly clicking click to call. It's more available. It was a vertical in which they felt comfortable to get on the phone right away, but it kind of got batched into the sales operations, so they didn't know. So when they came in, they weren't ready to have the normal conversation that they were expecting from years and years of sales operations optimization. They changed the scripts. They moved some things around a little bit. They educated more, and it was a phenomenal, ridiculous improvement in terms of the overall conversion rate. It went up like 1,000%. Now winds up being the second best campaign. So hopefully that gives you a little kind of insight in terms of how that contextual data is being used and how it could maybe even be better used if we broke down some of the silos between sales and marketing.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Very impressive conversion rate. So thank you. That was a great look at the value of leveraging contextual data. So Jonathan, maybe you could take us even further into the other types of tools and technologies that you recommend that companies can use to help fix the sales funnel and integrate that contextual data.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mila. So how do you do this? And yes, it takes technology, and there's great statistics about how more of the technology spend is going to be coming from marketing than ever before, and year on year it's going to continue to grow. So there's even an increased requirement for our marketing technology to work very well with the sales environment, to try to integrate this contextual data from the online and social and mobile sources into that sales operation and then back to result in those increased conversion rates. So Ravana, we recognize that customers have changed. We recognize that the technology needs to keep up with the change in customers' conversations and the fact that purchase conversations, the buying process is happening so much outside of the sales person interaction. So we needed to come up with a way to get engaged with customers in where they're having their conversations. So we went out and acquired WebMetro, one of the actually largest 25 search agencies in the U.S., to bring those capabilities to create unique demand so that search and online, social and mobile, offline, online marketing, the technology to actually create and manage in real time the bidding for the better leads and to be able to optimize those across the different platforms of search and display and mobile and social. We recognized that we needed that help in that awareness and consideration stages, or in the discover and explore stages that Jim was talking about, and we needed to change the process so that those leads aren't just being thrown over the wall to marketing, and marketing saying, gee, I wish I had better leads, or sales saying, gee, I wish I had better leads coming from marketing. We know we're great as converting hand raisers, and the sales excellence and our ability to acquire and grow and retain customers, leveraging multiple different varieties of CRM environments, but understanding the best practices of how do you use dispositions and what are the ones that matter, and how do you do analytics so that you're prioritizing the right nurturing process. Lead scoring and marketing automation makes sense, and content is the right for the different personas. But we wanted to create an integrated process from marketing through sales. And it's a very different approach than you'd see from an agency of record that's thinking about how do you associate the online activities with their offline activities. We're talking about and innovating around how do you engage those customers in the marketing process online and bring them all the way through to a sales conversion and to a happy and satisfied customer. So we're using the technologies that we have together between WebMetro and Rivanna to create a new platform that enables us to, if you look at the bottom left, not just start with what everyone's done historically, which is great first-party data around customer history and transaction and usage and products, which is already well used by brands to be able to understand how do you engage with existing customers going forward. But now we're connecting that information with the unique demand and data that's coming from these marketing activities of search and display and social and mobile to be able to bring in and have a better experience for lead generation, acquisition, growth of customers, retention of customers, marketing services across multiple channels, because we're connecting that data together. And we're being able to leverage the contextual information and be able to put that into an engine that can then make decisions and prioritize who should be contacted next with the right information for that customer, and identify what nurturing should occur, how should the sales channel engage with these customers that are coming in from that journey and that path. But Michael, maybe you'd like to describe, so how does, when you take advantage of this technology, how does that now turn into the marketing and sales vision of the future?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's exactly, what you described is exactly what's needed, is we need to be able to integrate the data, because right now a big part of why you see brands acknowledge this challenge but aren't able to really evolve and take advantage of what they know would be an uptick and a lift in performance if they could keep the conversation, be more relevant, make sure it's continuous across the entire process. What we need to happen is the data to be free-flowing. If data is free-flowing, we're going to be able to lock up that funnel or that whole pathway that they go through, and all the way from the original click that you get, the impression that you serve, all the way down to how it's tracked and how it's basically analyzed and moved into the sales operation, then moved back into prospect cultivation. It'll be seamless to the customer. They won't feel the difference. They won't see these disparate engagements that start and stop based on how they connect, and if it's voice or chat or if they're on the website. And this is really where you're going to see those big improvements in the conversion rates that we saw before of 0.75 to 1.54 that Jim pointed out. This is what's needed, is to have that kind of closed loop, consistent, seamless approach, and I think that's going to lock up some of the media waste and the marketing waste that's falling out of organizations right now because of the silos that exist.
So the result of putting together these marketing and sales technologies, of combining the contextual data with the sales operation innovation, is that marketing and sales can be together. We all know marketing and sales are all well-intentioned, chasing the goals that are put in front of them, and they need to continue to be a team, and providing a platform to enable them to be a more successful team is really what we're doing. And it's enabling us to provide differentiated results on the marketing side and then also on the sales side. And it addresses key outcomes that matter to businesses, right? When you put these together, you don't have the waste. You're able to target the better opportunities, so you're going to increase your revenue. The waste is gone because you're no longer spending on things that the sales team isn't having such success with, and you're getting better, deeper data to help you to make those determinations. Allows you to engage with customers who are having online conversations and get the word out about great new offers. And it creates scale, which is critically important. So this is how it works with lots of big operations. If you're onesie twosies, you're probably not going to benefit from this, because getting it started does take a bit of work, but the returns are fantastic, and that's where the ROI comes from. So we talked about at the beginning that they're great new data from the customer journeys and contextual data in marketing that can be a great asset in the sales operation. And there's great information in the sales operation that would be valuable to help drive the marketing ROI. We've shown you how Ravana and WebMetro have put together a unique solution in the marketplace to help engage customers earlier and more successfully and progress them through the sales process and provide you with differentiated results. But it's just from a passion around customer engagement and a passion around leveraging the new technologies to engage with these customers and to take advantage of expertise and leadership. So we are just excited about the future that's coming and the evolution that's going on, and we're continuing to work very diligently and hard to advance this technology platform that helps marketing and sales to integrate more successfully to drive better performance and better customer experience in sales.
Well, thanks, Jonathan and Michael, for providing our audience with such in-depth direction and insights around the tools and technologies that really help deliver the right message at the right time through the right channel. I think now is a good time to wrap up the Q&A with a trends question. So, Jim,
do
you want to offer your thoughts on what you believe will be the main trends around the sales organization next year?
Sure, absolutely. And what I'll try to do is kind of bring us full circle and put a bow on all that we've talked about, because Jonathan and Michael did talk in great detail about the data and the value there, which was absolutely fascinating. The technologies that underlie the ability to collect and then use that. All of that's really important to put together, but none of that will deliver the kind of value you're looking for unless we all tie it back to intelligence about our customers. So going back to the beginning, the sales process now is much more complicated, but at the same time, because so much of it happens now in the digital world, we have greater insight, greater ability to connect with customers in the right way during that process. And so at Forrester, that's why we see what I put up here, this evolution of the usage of this kind of data up to the over the next few years to what we see eventually as being what we call adaptive intelligence. If you start on the lower left there, that static intelligence, that's really kind of the old classic, pre-internet direct marketing, direct mail kind of world. You got a bunch of data, went into a database. When it came time for a campaign, you pulled some of it out and used it. And more companies have moved up to that idea of reactive, using that data in different ways, starting to share it around the organization a little bit more, interactive, where we're getting closer and closer to using that in real time, and then the future of being this idea of adaptive intelligence, where it really is in real time, working collaboratively, both within your organization and with other partners and sources outside your organization. That may be a whole nother webinar to talk about. But using that in this idea of intelligence about your customer, intelligence about how to make this particular touch at this moment as relevant and as meaningful and as valuable to the customer as possible. Because in achieving that, that's how you will drive success for your business and getting that sale closed and proving to that customer that having a relationship with your business will be more valuable and more rewarding for them than other organizations which aren't as tuned in to their needs and aren't paying as close attention to what they're really looking for.
Great. Thank
so hopefully that puts a nice bow on things for everyone.
It sure does, and it's we have some exciting changes to look forward to in the coming year. So thanks to Michael and Jonathan. It's time now to kick off our Q&A session. First, I'll offer a few reminders. If you'd like a PDF copy of the deck, click the Download Presentation button at the bottom of your screen. If you missed any part of this presentation or want to see it again, all attendees will receive an email with a link to the archived version. I'd like to remind everyone about the survey that's posted during our Q&A period coming up next. Please take a moment to participate, and you will need to turn off your pop-up blockers to enable that survey. So let's begin the Q&A. Again, to ask a question to Jonathan, Michael, or Jim, click the Submit Question button in the lower section of your presentation window. And if we don't get to your question, we'll email you a response after this webinar. So our first question comes from Lee Watson. He wants to know what you consider inbound in your multi-channel chart.
So this is Jonathan. I'll start, and then Jim, if you want to add on. Inbound from our perspective is looking at interactions that the customer is kicking off that will then directly connect with a sales team. So for example, very easy to have a click to call button or an 800 number on a landing page, for example, or a click to chat where you would be creating an opportunity that would be inbound to a sales operation. Or inquiries that that create that are triggered by the customer to start is kind of the narrow definition that I would use. An e-form that's filled out creates an outbound opportunity. In a social environment, if someone is actually out there raising their hand saying, help me, you still need to, that one's kind of on the fence about how you want to term it, but it's typically monitored and recognized by someone in an interaction center, and then they are making an outbound attempt to engage with that customer. So that's kind of how I think about it. But Jim, I don't know if you'd like to amplify it.
Yeah, no, I think I like your definition where which bounds it around that idea that this is an opportunity to connect a person with someone on the sales team or the sales operation team. And I'm glad you mentioned everything from the click to call and click to chat to things like social. I would put social more in that spectrum of inbound. But again, I think you have to be very context sensitive to that as well, and get that sense of is the kind of question that consumer is asking or the issue that they're raising, is that something that is best addressed in that more personal kind of conversation, or is there something in that the way they phrase it that maybe they aren't ready to be pushed quite that far yet, and you can satisfy their need with more of a follow-up kind of outbound connection as well. So that's where it does get to be a little bit of a gray area in this world. And again, you have to think more about your customer, what they're looking for, rather than simply in the old days having a very clear definition of this channel is inbound, this channel is outbound, this channel is sales, this channel is marketing. The customer context really is ultimately the decider of that.
Great. Our next question is a B2B focus. The person would like to know, in a B2B environment, as buyers do more of their purchasing research online, what role should sales play in the buying process?
This is Jonathan, so I'll start. Obviously, as we've talked about, the salesperson's engaged now after a lot of, or potentially a lot of content has been consumed and consideration has been done by the number 4. One of the world's leading technology clients, we actually have an account management where we're selling servers on behalf of this client to public sector and large enterprises. And our sales team's enabled with voice, chat, email, social, instant messaging, and they're using all of those different channels to engage with customers or prospective customers, because each customer may be different in how they would want to engage. So you get them at a different stage of the process, but you need to enable them with multiple channels in order to be able to meet the customer on in the channel that the customer prefers. Jim, anything to add there?
I would say that the real difference is that sales role really needs to become much more of a solutions discussion than in the past. A lot of it was an education discussion. Again, if people couldn't get access to information that they needed in the past, a lot of the early sales discussions were the basics. Here's who our company is. Here's what our product line is. Here's what it can do for you. And that's the kind of information that now that prospect has already done. They've done their homework, and they're coming to you armed with that information already, and they're almost, they may know as much, maybe even more about even the competitor product and how you stack up than your salespeople do. So that's where I say that the salesperson has to be a little bit more solutions. So tune more into what is that customer's goal? What is it they're trying to do for their business or for their, their personal life? That hair restoration example was a great one. What is the benefit they're really looking to achieve? And then engage in a much more almost intimate conversation with that prospect about how to match up what you're offering with that need that the customer is telling you about.
Great. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so thanks to our speakers today, and thanks for everyone for joining us. This concludes Dead Sales Walking, How to Bring the Sales Funnel Back to Life, a one-to-one media webinar sponsored by Ravana. On behalf of the entire team, thanks for attending and have a great day.